I am Pramod Kumar Srivastava, a professor at TMU. My subject is business research methodology. In the business research methodology, today I am going to discuss on the topic of the data measurement and its types, data tabulations, data interpretation, data analysis, and the presentation of the data. So, the outcome of this topic, after going through this topic, you are able to understand, to define and describe the various types and the nature of data, describe the techniques of data processing, tabulation and the presentation of data, and also describe the interpretation from the table that have been generated. So whatever the table you are generating after the processing of data, you can also describe the things. So these are the outcomes of this lecture. Next, introduction. So basic purpose of the data analysis is to identify whether research assumption were correct or not, and to highlight the possible new view on the problem under study. So whatever the problem we are going to understand, we have to highlight the possible views on that particular problem, outlines in the objective with the collected data. So whatever the data you are collecting on the basis of the objective, we have to answer that objective on the basis of collecting data. Before we look at how variables may be affected one another, we need to summarize the information obtained on each variable in simple tabular form or in a figure. Some of the variable may be produced in the numerical or continuous data, while the other variable may be produced in the categorical data. In analysis our data, it is important first to determine the type of the data that we are dealing with, and this is the crucial because the type of data used largely determined by the type of statistical technique that should be used to analyze the data. Once the data is processed, the table and the graphs are prepared and the report writing work may be initiated. So this is the some important crux related with this lecture. So next slide is data measurement. Measurement is the process of observing and recording the observations that are collected as part of the research efforts and the process of assessing number of objects and the observation. But we do measures abstract concept like happiness, quality of life, personality, opinion, etc. We have to understand that the quality of the good measurements are. So simply when we are measuring the data or the measurement of data, data may be the quantitative data, data may be qualitative data. So both type of data we are going to measure in the research. So there are some quality of the measurement. First is it is precise, unambiguous, free from errors, valid, reliable and practical. These all goodness we all are discussed in the last classes. So there is no need to elaborate on this topic. If you want to know more about this slide, you can concern with my last lecture. So next slide is the tools which are developed for measurement and collection of data should be valid to measure the characteristics which it is intended to measure. So simply what we are intended to measure, we have to validate that characteristics, reliable to the extent to which an experiment, test or any measuring procedures get the same result on repeated trial. So simply the reliability is the thing that when we are repeating the same events or same activity, we get a same result. That is called the reliability. Sensitivity enough to collect differences in the characteristics So that is part of the sensitivity. The differences we are observing in the characteristics, specific enough to represent only the characteristics of the interest. So whatever the characteristics of interest, that is specific we have to present. Next point is the appropriate to the object of the study. Whatever the object of study we are going to, that should be appropriate with that object of the study. And next point is to provide adequate distribution of response in the study the population. So whatever the population we are selecting to study, we get a appropriate response, and that response is distributed evenly within the population frame from where we are extracting the data. And the next point is meet the objective of the study. So these are the major point or the major tool when we are developing the measurement and collecting the data, and when we are developing and collecting the data, we have to go through these points: validity, reliability, sensitivity, specific, and the adequacy and a response meet with the objective of the study. These are the factors we have to go through that factor, and this is the mandatory factor when we are going for a good result or good quality of research. Next, there are key points to keep in the mind while developing effective tools for the data collection. However, the following factor may affect the validity of data. So remedial steps should be taken accordingly. So when there is a chance of affecting of the data by any factor or by any mean, we have to go with some remedial actions. So there are the certain remedial action we are going accordingly. That first is the respondent. Respondent reluctant, modesty, having a little knowledge about the detail of the research problem to answer, may not admit ignorance, guessing about the response, and feel boredom due to the long question and fatigues or the anxiety. So these are the things we have to remove from the respondent. If we are not able to remove these things or not able to eliminate or reduce this thing from the respondent, there is a chance of the incorrect data, and that lead to be the error in the measurement. Next is, there are key points to keep in mind while developing the effective tool for the data collection. However, the following factors may affect the validity of data. So remedial steps should be taken accordingly. So next is the situation. Lack of support to the field investigator, lack of assurance to the anonymity and the confidentiality, etc. So these are the situation we have to go through that situation, and we have to manage that situation and try to minimize the problem or the limitation in the doing activity related with the data collection. Investigators or the interviewer may rewards or reorder questions, styles and the look, carelessness in filling the replies, and incorrect coding or the calculation of the score. So sometimes some problem related with the investigator or the interviewer is sometimes not able to record in a properly. They are sometimes not able to follow the style what the style they have taken. Sometimes they are careless to filling the replies, sometimes they are coding incorrect code, and sometimes they are calculating scores incorrectly. So these are the problem related with the investigators or the interviewer when they are collecting the data, and this lead to the increase in the measurement errors. Next is the instrument. The complex word, ambiguous measuring, ambiguous meaning, poor printing, inadequate space for answer and response choice omission. So these are the problem related to the instrumental problem. Sometimes we are using the complex word and that complex word is not able to understand by the respondent. Sometimes ambiguous meaning of that word, what type of word you are or what type of sentence you are using. Sometimes due to the poor printing, it is not legible for the respondent in a very proper manner. Sometimes there is an inadequate space for the writing the answer of your particular question, and sometimes there is a choice. Sometimes you are putting an MCQ and there is a omission of some choices. So these are the possibility, and that due to that possibility, that can be increase the error in the measurement, because we are collecting the faulty data, and due to the collection of the faulty data by this instrumental error, that lead to be the increase in measurement error. Next is the type of data. We already gone through. There are the certain type of data. One type of data is called primary and secondary data. Second type of data is time series data, cross sectional data or panel data, and third type is the categorization and numerical data. So then generally we are divided data into this categorization. So you have to go through and you have to make or create better understanding regarding the type of data, and there is no need of confusion of any type of data. So you have to make better understanding regarding the type of the data. So primary data, various of time in my last classes I talked about the primary data. So primary data is primarily collected especially for the particular purposes. When a researcher is going to do research and they gather the information on their own research from the field of the research, and the tools they are using, like in the questionnaire, interviewing, or the scheduling. These are the tools they are. Sometimes they are observing, so observation tools. So different tools they are using to gather the data. That type of data is known as in the primary data, because that data is primarily for that research purposes. That data is not taken from others' research data. So second type of data is the secondary data. So secondary data are the data that have been collected for the another purpose, and where we will use the statistical method with the primary data. This means that after performing a statistical operation on the primary data, the result become known as in the secondary data. Researcher where one gather this kind of data is referred to as in the desk research. The source for gathering secondary data example are book, journals, or the different archives, or the different publication on the non-government or the government organization, domestic or international organization. From they are the lot of the sources, from there we are getting the data, and today we are getting data through the different search engines if we have a internet inability, because this time it is access of internet is very easy for approx every citizen of the world. Next is in the time series. So time series data is also known as a longitudinal data, because we are gathering the data on the different time frame, which follows one subject changes over a course of time. For example, the average production of the wheat from 1990 to 2009. So this data is called in the time series data, because the wheat production is same. Wheat production, the characteristics is same, but the production output is different in a different time frame. So on different time frame we can getting the data, and that type of data is known as time series data. Next type of data is the cross-sectional data. In the cross-sectional data, the data collected by the observing many subjects, such as the individual farms, countries or regions at the same point of time, and without regard to the different time. Analysis of the cross-section data usually consists of comparing the different among the subject. For example, we want to measure our current obesity level of the population. The cross-sectional data provided us a snapshot of the population. At that one point of time, noted that we do not know, based on the cross-sectional sample, the obesity is increasing or decreasing. We can only describe the current proportion. So sometime for we getting a different section of data in a same time frame, that is called cross sectional analysis. And the time series analysis, we are getting data on a different time basis, so that is called time series analysis data or the longitudinal data. Next is the panel data. Panel data is combination of the both cross sectional and time series data, and a look at the multiple subject and how they changes over the course of time. Panel analysis uses panel data to examine the changes in the variable over a time and the differences variable between the subject. So panel data is the combination of longitudinal data and cross sectional data. In this we gather the different time frame basis data, as well as we gather on the same time frame basis different section of the data. So and through this we can understand the how data is varied on the basis of time series or on the basis of cross sectional base. Categorical or the nominal data. So categorical or the nominal data that can be divided into the categories or the groups such as the male or female, and can take only the discrete note decimal value. They are called categorical or a nominal data. There are two type of categorical data. They are nominal or the ordinal. In a nominal data, the variable are divided into the numbers of the name categorized. This category, however, cannot be ordered on above another, and they are not greater or lesser than the each other. So categorical and nominal data. Continuous and the numerical data. So continuous and the numerical data that are taken any value including the decimal value are called continuous data. Data that can be measured on the scale is said to be a scalar. We speak the numerical data if they are expressed in the number. There are two type of numerical data. They are discrete or the continuous, or discrete data are the distinct series of the number. So continuous or numerical data. Next is in the tabulation. Just I am giving an overview of how we are processing the data. So tabulation, the tabulation operation need to be done to bring the data into the presentation form, presentable form. First, the tabulation is started with the data coding, editing and feeding, data tabulation, figure and the graphs. So these are the part we are using data in the tabulation form, and we will now discuss this operation one after other for both categorical and numerical data. So we are just giving a brief on the tabulation. Once data is collected, the researcher think about the processing and analysis of the data. So as well as we are finalizing of the collection of data, the next step is the processing and collection of data, and this is a crucial stage of the research work. Here the researcher has to consult the guides and the other academicians who have done research in the related field. Therefore, it is advised that the data processing must be planned in advance and necessarily during the time of the questionnaire formulation and during the time of the data collection. So processing, or what we are going for the processing, we have to go through before the collection of data. So these are the process we have to go through. Nowadays, with the advent of the computer, researcher might think it is the job of computer assistant, but it is not so. So simply the data processing is not a job of the computer assistant, because he or she do not know for which purpose or from where or from how you are getting the data, what are the mechanism, what are the tools and technique you are getting to gather the data. So it is also a crucial job for the researcher. So before either giving it to the computer assistant or doing it manually, a lot of activity have to be completed. So first we have to complete the edit the data which are received from the field. So whatever the data we are receiving, first step is we have to edit that one. Second step is to coding that data. Third step is prepare the master chart in the data that is computed or manually. So what you are doing, computing or the manually? First you have to go with the master chart, and the last with the presentation of the data. How you make the data more presentable, more understandable, more interesting. Either giving it to the computer assistant or doing it manually, a lot of activity have to be completed. So first we have to completing the editing of data which are received from the field, coding the data, preparation of the master chart in the field to be computed, and the preparation of the data. So these are the activity we have to go with. So first point is editing of the data. The editing of the data is the first step of the data processing and analysis. After collecting data, either through the questionnaire or the schedule, you have to edit it. You have to carefully check the missing and the wrong entered data. Whatever the missing data or what there is wrong data, we have to check that data. Therefore, in a large scale survey or in a research, the company undertaking the research project appointing surveyors or the editor or the proper checking of the data. An example of editing of data is given below. Suppose that you conduct a survey on the occupation status of the village people in the village. For example, you have to collect data from the head of the house. The questionnaire for the purpose is as follows. So you want to collect data for the purpose of the occupation status, and for this you just concern the head of the family in the village, and you are preparing questionnaire for that same. Here there is some sort of examples given how you are preparing. So first it is started with the name of the respondent. Here the name of the respondent given Rahul Yadav, the age of the respondent, the gender of the respondent, caste of the respondent, occupation of the respondent, income of the respondent, wife name of the respondent, wife age of the respondent, occupation of the respondent wife, and any monthly income. Sometimes the wife of the respondent is housewife, but they earn money. So also we can calculate the monthly income of the housewife. Sometimes they are doing the saving jobs, or sometimes doing agriculture job, or lot of job they are doing, tailoring job they are doing, or knitting job they are doing, and by that job they are earning. So at that condition we have also mentioning the income of that housewife. So in this questionnaire you can see that the housewife name is Riya Yadav, is a housewife, but she earned 10,000. She may be a housewife, but the tailoring she may be earning 10,000 per month. So therefore her occupation may be the category as in the self-employment. Like this you have to cross-check the data and try to get accurate information which will minimize the error and strengthen your research finding. Therefore editing of the data is very essential before sending it for the processing. So editing is the first step of the data processing. Next is the coding. The questionnaire must be properly coded before either sending it for the feeding into the computer or entering it in the master chart. The coding of the data is necessary. The coding of data will make data entry easy. Coding of data means assisting numerical symbol for each response of the question. The purpose of giving numerical symbols is to translate raw data into the numerical data which may be counted and tabulated. An example of the coding of the material status or the educational of is given below. So here there is a certain way how we are coding the data. So some type the material status of the coding is if the respondent is married, we are using 01. If the respondent is separated, married but now he is not living with her wife, so we are using the coding word is separated. If the respondent is widow, we are using the coding word 3. If the respondent is divorced, so we are using coding word 05, or if they are never married, so we are coding 06, or any other we are using 07. By this way we are using the different data and checking that code are properly inserted in the questionnaire must be done during the editing of the questionnaire. It is always better to prepare the code book for your questionnaire. This coding can also be done during the time of the data collection and if the code book is available with you. So by this way we are doing the coding work. So next is the entering data into the master chart. If you are doing tabulation manually, it is always wise to enter the data into the master chart. The master chart is a large sheet which will enable you presentation of statistical data is doing in the 3 way. So next slide we are going to see the textual presentation. In the textual presentation we are presenting data in the text format. This is the method. The statistical information is presented in the text form. Generally this type of representation is made in a descriptive way. It requires a careful reading of the text in order to grab the meaning and the significance of the facts and figures given therein. But for most people, it is not a suitable and effective method of presentation of statistical information because it is not easy for a reader to single out of the individual information and the figure out it. For advantage of this method, that is ordinary person can prepare and present the text and the layman can read it and grab it. So simply the textual presentation is not understand a better manner to present the information, but if the person is not very aware about it and is not a very highly educated person, so for the very simplicity just say they are ability to read and write ability, so they can easily convert data into the textual formation and the reader easily can understand the data, textual data by reading that information. So this is the certain importance of the textual presentation of the data. Next type of presentation is tabular presentation. In this type of presentation, we create data into the tabular formation, and there are so many tabular formation that all we are discussing in the last classes. So this method is the statistical information is presented in the form of table. The facts and figures are gathered and then incorporated in the table. Generally this type of presentation is made in the tabular form with the row and column basis. Tables summarize the statistical data in the logical and orderly manner. This the main advantage of this method is that tables are brief, concise and contain only relevant figure. Table also facilitate the comparison of the figure, and the only disadvantage of this method is the presentation of table and the interpretation of the table requires some skills and technique. So tabular presentation is better than the textual presentation, but in a tabular presentation we require some skills and technique. If the enumerator have no knowledge about the tabular skills and technique, then it is not easy task for that type of person. So technically tabular presentation is advanced than the textual presentation. The third type of presentation is known as another graphical presentation. So in this case, graphical presentation is more advanced format as compared to the textual and the tabular presentation. It gives a very better picture of the understanding of the information. So statistical information is presented in the form of graph or chart. Facts and figures are generated first and then they are depicted in the graph and chart for the presentation. Or generally this type of presentation is made through figures, diagrams, charts or the graph. The main advantage of this method that is facts and the figure become more attractive and appealing to eye, and disadvantage of this method is cannot be shown in a detailed and accurately manner. So here are some advantage and disadvantage of all the format of presentation, and on a broadly basis we are presenting data into the three format: textual format presentation, or the tabular presentation, and graphical presentation, so that the researcher is using all three methods of presenting of data, and that make data more attractive, more understanding and easy to for everyone. Either they are technical or either they are non-technical, either they are higher highly educated person or they are less educated person. So when we are using all three methods of the presentation, that make more attractive, more easy to understand and more eye appealing, because when we are using different colors in a tabular presentation and in a graphical presentation, that make data more eye appealing and more attractive. So presentation is very important part when you are writing the information. The data tabulation. So data tabulation is in the process when we are arranging data into the tabular formation in the order formation or systematic arrangement of the numerical data presented in a row and column for the purpose of the information comparison or interpretation. These are the basic purpose: for the information purpose, for the comparison purpose, or for the interpretation purpose. For these all purpose we are arranging data in the order or systematic manner in the row and the column. So a statistical table is a systematic arrangement of statistical data into the row and column, and it summarizes the data in a logical and ordered manner for the purpose of presentation, comparison and interpretation. So these are the 3 points: for the purpose of presentation, or the purpose of the comparison, or for the purpose of the interpretation. So tabulation is thus a scientific process and mean recording statistical data in the systematic and orderly manner. So simply tabulation formation is a scientific method for using the data in the systematic and orderly manner. So tables. So a statistical table has the following 5 parts. So when we are drawing a statistical table, so at least the table have 5 parts in the table. So first part is known as in the title of the table, and that title is depicted on the top of the table, and it should be clear, concise and self-explanatory. It should be written on the top of the table as already I talked to you. Second part is stub. This is the column used in the mentioning the item and their headings. It is the leftmost column of the table, and stub is generally marked with the row, and each row and item is mentioned. The stub should be clear and self-explanatory. The third part is the caption. Caption is the heading of the column. The stub is the heading of the row, and the caption is the heading of the column. Other than the stub is the upper part of the table, and the caption should be properly culminate and the worded. Sometime below the caption, the unit of the measurement and the column number is called the box head. And the next part is the body, the main part of the table that contains the whole information of what you want to exhibit information. So the body is the main part of the table and the figure entered therein should be distinct. And the next part is the sources and the footnotes. That is called a last part of the table. So last part of the table, if the researcher is pursuing data from the secondary source, then the sources of the data need to be mentioned. For example, if you are citing data from the census of the India and the year and the department of the state need to be mentioned. After the mentioning the sources, the researcher has to provide a footnote that is in the same cell if you are giving the figure or in the parenthetics or the percentage of the total, and then it must be mentioned in the footnote as example of the table is given below. So here example of the table is given below. The title of the table where it is mentioned, stop of the table, the column of the table, body of the table and the box head of the table, and the last one is the source and footnote that is given in the bottom of the table. So these are the sequencing of the table. Types of tabulations. Tabulation is done based on the data. The following type of tabulation is generally constructed. One is constructed the frequency distribution table, constructed the cross tabulation, constructed the figure and graphs. So these are the three ways we are constructing the tabulation, and we can say that the following types of the use of the tabulation. So construction of frequency distribution table. So a frequency distribution table can be two types: simple frequency distribution and group frequency distribution. In constructing a simple frequency distribution, the observations are not divided into the group or class. Only individual values are shown, whereas in the group frequency distribution, the observations are divided into group or classes. Here the example, here the simple frequency distribution table mark obtained by the 5th class student in the mathematics. So there is in the marks 20, 21, 25, 30. The tally marks given and the frequency is given on the corresponding marks. Next, the construction of frequency distribution table for group frequency distribution. So in a frequency distribution, group frequency distribution, here we are creating a mark obtained, that is 1 to 10, 11 to 20, 21 to 30 and 31 to 40, 41 to 50, and the tally marks given here. For the 1 to 10 the frequency is 11, 10 to 11 to 20 frequencies 20, 21 to 30 frequencies 21, 31 to 40 frequency is 30 in, and 41 to 50 frequency is 9. So these are the presentation of a group frequency distribution table. Next is the construction of the frequency distribution table. While preparing the group frequency distribution, following points have to be taken into consideration. The group must be not overlap, otherwise there will be the confusion about which group or the measurement belongs to. So second is that there must be the continuity from one group to the next, and which means that there must be no gaps, otherwise some measurement may not fit in the group. So these are the things we have to go through. And the next is the frequency distribution table. The group must range from the lower measurement to the higher measurement, so that all the measurement have to group to which they can assign. And the next is the group should normally be an equal width, and so that the counts in a different group can easily be compared. Next is in the construction of cross tabulation. So far, we have made a table containing frequency distribution for one variable at a time in order to partially describe our data depending on the objects of our study and the study types. We may have to examine the relations between several of our variables at the same time. For this purpose, it is appropriate to construct cross tabulation of the data depending on the objectives and the type of the study. Difficult kind of cross tabulation may be required. The example of cross tabulation are given below. Here the three different type of cross tabulation of the data have been given below. So example first, a study was carried out of the degree of job satisfaction among the doctors and nurses in the rural and urban area. To describe the sample, a cross tabulation are constructed which included the sex and the residence, rural or urban, or the doctors or the nurse interview. This was used because in the analysis the opinion of male and female staff had to be compared separately for rural and urban area. So by this way we are going to arrange the cross tabulation on that description. So type of teachers by residence. So here also example given that. So there is in the rural, urban, the principal or the teacher. Next is the interpretation. So table shown that the higher percentage of the teacher than the principal work in the rural area, but that the overall a greater proportion of the teaching staff work in the urban area. So by this way we can understand that the rural and urban comparison, also we can understand that the greater proportion in the urban area than the rural area, and also we can understand the genders of the teachers residents, rural or urban basis. It can be concluded that the table 4.4 that there are more males serving a rural area than the female. These males in a rural area are apparently the teachers. To obtain an overview of the distribution of the principal and the teacher by gender in a rural or urban area, we can construct the following 2/4 cross tabulation. So this is the 2/4 cross tabulation, and this 2/4 cross tabulation giving the residence and the sex of the principals and teacher. So here the teaching staff, the principal, male, female, teacher, male, female, rural and urban. This the 2/2 cross sectional tabulations. So this is the example of the 2/2 cross sectional tabulation. Interpretation. This table shows that in a glance that male dominate the rural health services. It also indicates that the males dominate the medical professions, but the overall there are more females, male nurse, and that the female are mainly clustered in a town. The data in the table is usually listed in an absolute figure as well as in a relative frequency, percentage or proportion, as already seen in the unit 3. For numerical data, the mean, median and the mode with the standard deviation may be calculated as well as described in the sample. Next is the general hints. So there are certain general hints while constructing the tables. So make sure that all the category of the variables presented in the table have been specified and that they are mutually exclusive, no overlap and no gap, and are executive. When making cross tabulation, check that the column and row counted correspond to the frequency count for the each variable, and next is the also check that the grand total in the table corresponding on the number of subject in the sample. If not, the explanation is required. This could be presented as in the footnote, missing data for an example. So whatever there is a certain requirement, we all mention in the footnote also. So further general hints are the think of a clear title of each table. Whatever you are table mentioning, every table have a distinctive and clear title. Also we see here that the heading of the row and column leave no room for the misinterpretation. So you have also gone through carefully that no row and no column have any misinterpretation or any space for the misinterpretation. And the next point is the number you or table and the graph are keeping them together with the objects to which they are related. This will assist the organizing your report and ensure that work is not duplicated. Construction of figure and graphs. If your report contains many descriptive tables, it may be more readable if you represent the most important one in a figure. The most frequently used figure for the presenting data including. So when you are using and going through that presentation, you have to go through in a very careful manner of constructing the figure and graph, and most frequently used figure is presented in the data included. These are the most frequent things included as in the figure and graph, that is the bar chart or the pie chart or the histogram, line graph or the scatter or the map. We will now look at example on the above mentioned figure that can be used for the presenting data. So again I am giving you the example of that figure and graph. They are most frequently used in the presentation. So first, the bar chart. The data presentation in the bar chart using either absolute frequency or the relative frequency or the percentage, and an example is given. So here there is the example given in this slide that a percentage of the clinicals and relative frequency of the shortage of the anti-malarial drugs in the rural health institution. So noted that the sample size must be indicated if you present the data in the percentage. So whatever you are using the data and you are using the percentage of data, but you have to ensure that the size of the sample. So this is the way how we are presenting data in the bar chart format. So next is in the pie chart. A pie chart can be used for the same set of data, providing the reader with the quick overview of the data presented in the different form. A pie chart illustrates the relative frequency of the number of items. All segment of the pie chart should be added up to 100%. So one circle of the pie chart is considered as the 100%, and we divided the data into their percentage. So here there is the example of the pie chart. You can go through this pie chart. Here are the same data presented in bar chart and how we are presenting that data in the pie chart. So again I am giving you the information. This is the bar chart data, and this same data is we are presenting in the pie chart. So how this both data presentation giving you a different eye view, or giving you a different interaction, or giving you a different interesting view to go through the data. Next is in the histogram. Numerical data is often presented in the histogram, which are very similar to the bar chart, which are used for the categorical data, and the important differences, however, is that is in the histogram the bar are connected as long as there is no gap between the data, whereas in the bar chart the bar are not connected and the different categories are distinct entries. An example of the histogram is given here. The example of the histogram is given. You can see the example of the histogram, how we are using the histogram data. So percentage of clinical and the number of patient per month. So percentage of clinical treated different number of malaria patient in a 1 month. So by this way we are putting information in a graphical form, and this type of graphical form is known as the histogram form. Next is the line graph. So line graph is particularly using for the numerical data if you wish to show a trend over time. An example of the line graph is given. This is the example of the line graph, how we are showing information into the line graph formats. So daily number of the malaria patient at the health center in the district X. So this is giving you a daily number, frequency or daily strength of the patient of the malaria disease in a particular district, and by this way you can understand that how this figure is increasing. So it is easy to show two or more distribution in one graph as long as differences between the line is easy to distinguish. Thus it is possible to compare frequency distribution in different group and the age distribution between the male and female and the cases and the controls. So line chart is very better manner to present the information, and also we can give presenting information when there is the requirement of the comparison of on the different basis, on the basis of the gender basis or on the basis of the age basis or any other basis, on sometime on the basis of the different cases basis, or sometime on the different districts how the malaria is affecting on daily basis. This line graph is also used for the particular purpose. Next is the scatter diagram. So scatter diagram are usually for showing information on two variables which are possibly related, and the example of a scatter diagram given below is used where we are dealing with the concept of association and concept of correlation. So when there is the concept of association or concept of correlation, at that situation we are using the scattered diagram. The example of the scattered diagram here in this slide, the weight and the family income scattered diagram. Here the one side is weight and the another side is in the family income, and how this is showing the weight of the 5-year-old according to the annual family income. Note, it is important that all figures presented in your research report have numbers, clear title and the clearly labeled, or we are using clear keywords for that diagram. So this type of scatter diagram. And the next is the map. In addition to the figure above, the use of map may be considered to present information. For instance, the area where the study was carried out can be shown in the map. If the study explored the epidemiology of cholera, and a map could be produced showing the geographical distribution of the cholera cases together with the distribution of the protected water sources, thus illustrate that there is an association, and if the study related with the vaccinations coverage, a map could be developed to indicate the clinical site and the vaccination coverage among under the 5 in each village, and perhaps showing that home clinical distance is an important factor associated with the vaccination status. So in this section we discuss about the tabulation and interpretation of the data. Now answer the following questions. Thank you.